Alright, today we're going to introduce what we call UML class diagrams, right? Which is essentially just a way for us to describe a structure, right, without focusing on the implementation of it, right? We want to describe it in a way that it is easier for any other programmer, right, using essentially any other language. Doesn't have to necessarily be C++, to essentially have the same implementation, or say rather same structure, right? Remember we said that we're not focusing on the implementation of it, right? So just the same structure, right? So what I'm going to do is essentially go ahead and open up draw.io, right? I'll provide the link in the description for this essentially website where we're going to be using these shapes to describe essentially a class, right? So let me just go ahead and open this side by side with our class, right? So what we're going to do, once you create a file, right, you can just go ahead and create a file. I'll call it class.draw.io, right? So draw.io is simply the extension, right? All right, so once that opens up, you can just go ahead and click on this button here, right, and essentially choose shapes. I essentially just want to open those shapes up, right? And then we're going to, you can choose any template here, right? We're going to choose this template over here, right? And then we can go ahead and close that, right? Let's just go ahead and open this. Right. So essentially we are provided with a template, right? We can see that this is where our class name is going to be, right? And then we'll have essentially the properties in this section and the methods in this section, right? So let's just go ahead and fill this up, right? We're just going to represent this class that we already have here, right? So we're going to go ahead and say our class name in this case is going to be car, right? Then now we need to essentially discuss the properties that we have, right, which is essentially our variables in our function, right? So from what I'm seeing, that we have essentially these properties, right? Remember this is it's a function, right, or a method, right? So we're just going to ignore that for now. We have these properties which are private, right? And then essentially we also have these properties which are public, right? So how we go about doing this, right? So we see that we essentially have a template. In this case, we have a plus in the beginning, and then they say that we have a field, and then we have a type. What this means that this is essentially the accessor type. When we say the accessor type, we're basically saying that what interface is our variable in, right, or our properties in, right? If it is in the public, right, we're going to have a plus, right? And if it is in the private interface, like we have here, these are four functions, or rather these four properties, right, they're going to essentially have a minus, right? So let's just go ahead and fill in those values, right? So we're going to start with our public properties, right? We're going to have plus, right, and then we're going to have essentially the name of the name of the property model, and then essentially the data type, right? Just like essentially the template gave us, right? So and then let's just go ahead and fill in the rest of the essentially properties, right? Right. So once we have done the public interface properties, we can move ahead to the private properties, right? So let's just start at the top and say minus. Remember, because these are private, we're going to essentially say minus. Let me just try and zoom in this so we can see more clearly. Right. So we're going to say minus height int, right? And then we can essentially just fill in the rest of them, right? Let's just go ahead and say double. Right. So remember, the key thing to take from this is that it is essentially the accessor type, right? Depending on essentially where you placed it, is it in the private interface or the public interface, right? And then essentially it is the variable name or the property name, and then followed by the data type. So in this case, our data type of this essentially specific property, it is a const int, right? So then what we need to be aware of with static members is that how we represent them, because you can imagine if we went ahead and said minus, remember what we said, the whole thing that we want to achieve here is that someone must be able to read this diagram and essentially be able to translate it into any kind of program, right? It can be C++, it can be C, whatever it may be, right? So in this case, how would we differentiate them from essentially these normal functions, right? So what we do is with static functions, or rather static properties, we need to essentially underline them. So I'm going to essentially highlight that and then underline it, right? Now essentially a programmer, right, because we essentially programmers know this general rule, right? Now they know that this is essentially a static member, right? So once we have filled in those properties, we can go ahead and essentially fill in our functions, right, or our methods, right? So let's just go ahead and start with the public ones, right? So we can see that we're going to start with our constructor, right? So remember what we said. We said that we start with the accessor, right? In this case, it's in the public interface. So we're going to have a plus car, right? And because essentially in this case the car does not have a return type, we just have that, and this would be enough, right? So and then we can essentially have the other one and say car, which is in this case, I hope everybody recognizes that this essentially would be our copy construct, right? So we're going to say car, the parameter. Remember we said that now in this case we don't have a return type. That's why we don't have the dot and then something. We'll see essentially how that works when we get to these functions, right? But in this case we don't have a return type. What we're going to do is essentially we also have to represent the parameters, because in this case, yes, this is represented, right? But this one would not essentially represent our copy constructor, because this does not show the parameters. So let's just go ahead and represent the parameters. We're going to say the parameter name and essentially the return type, right? Let's just go ahead and do that, just like we did with those properties, right? It's the parameter name, in this case the variable name first, and then the return type, right? Sorry for that, right? And then the return type, and then we can do the same thing for the the destructor, right? Then let us move on to essentially methods with a return type, just if one may say, right? Let's just go ahead and say plus drive, right? In this case the data type is going to be void, right? So this is where we see the colon, and then in a way we can say the data type. The reason I'm saying in a way, in this case the void is not a return data type, right? We just put it there just to emphasize that it's not a function that returns something, right? And then remember, again, we need to describe also the parameters. So we need to essentially go open the parentheses and say speed, name of the parameter, and then the data type, right? And then we can continue and do the same for the other functions. Again, remember that this is essentially a static member. So what we need to do is essentially highlight it and then underline it to emphasize that it's a static member, right? So that any programmer can recognize that, right? And then the last one that we need to implement is this, or rather write down, is essentially this private function, right? So what we need to do, remember, we say minus, right? No, this is not a private, rather this is not a static member. I'm just having problems with the formatting, but yeah, it just took care of that, right? This is not a static member, so it's a minus and then reset car, and then essentially the data type, right? So that's essentially how we can go about describing this this class. Another thing that we need to be able to represent using UML diagrams is essentially association, which is essentially just describing the relationship that essentially a class can have with other classes, right? Because we can see that essentially a class sometimes doesn't necessarily just work alone, right? It can use other classes. It can even essentially have members other classes as members, right? So there's three different types of relationships that we need to be aware of, right? When we talk about association, we talk about dependency, right? We talk about aggregation, and we talk about composition, right? The easier one, let us start with the easiest one, right? Which is dependency, right? Let me just go ahead and remove that, right? So we essentially just going to describe this small class, this small computer class, right? We don't necessarily need a lot of members in this case, because we just want to show the relationship, right? So let's just go ahead and do this, and I'm gonna need 2 of them, right? So the first class is essentially, in this case we're just describing the computer class, right? So we're just gonna have that. We're gonna have the name of the class, right? For now we don't necessarily care about like I said, the properties, the methods, right? But we're just going to essentially put one method that we already have in there. Let's just go ahead and do that, right? Then the second class that we're going to have essentially is the printf class, right? And I'm just going to remove this for now because we don't have anything, right? It's not really that important as of now. right? So now we need to essentially find a way to describe the relationship that these two have, right? We said that in this case it is what we call a dependency relationship. That means that the computer class essentially just uses the print, right? We can imagine our computer using essentially a printer to print something, right? It just uses it, right? And it does not essentially store that class. We'll see how aggregation and composition changes that, but in this case our computer essentially rather doesn't store it, just uses it, right? So how we represent that essentially, let me just go ahead and look for the arrow. Right, so yeah, it took me a while to get that arrow, but yeah, that's essentially the arrow that we are looking for, the dependency. It's labeled dependency, right? And then we can just go ahead and connect them, right? Just to show essentially that the computer uses the printer, right? Let's just go ahead and connect that, right? And then essentially that's how we would represent this relationship, right? We can see that our computer class is using, right, the printer, right? That's the dependency relationship. The second relationship that we need to be aware of is essentially aggregation, right? So how aggregation works is essentially, let's just go ahead and remove this. Aggregation essentially has partial ownership, right? Partial ownership of another class, right? So it's essentially in this case, this is a bit ambiguous, but what I wanted to create is essentially a class, right, of students, basically, right? The reason why I say it's ambiguous because we have class, right? But yeah, that's just to sort of we understand what we're creating, right? We're creating a class, right? And then inside the class, obviously, we have what we call essentially students, right? So we see how essentially we're moving from dependency whereby we don't need to store the printer in our computer, right? In our computer class, we just use it once or maybe even twice, but we don't actually store that those essentially rather the printer or the class. But with aggregation, we can see how essentially we partially store it and essentially use it. We can even use it later, right? But what we need to be aware of with aggregation is that it essentially we call it partial ownership, right? That means that it still exists outside this class, right? We'll see how that works essentially with composition, right? Or maybe rather, let's jump into composition and see how composition works before we can understand aggregation, right? So composition, essentially, we call it full ownership. We call it a type of relationship whereby this class has full ownership over the other class. In this case, we're building a school, right? And a school essentially has students, right? So it's not this topic or these two, it's not something that you can just cram. You need to really understand them, right? So what I want you to understand is that this school, right, has full ownership of all the students. What we mean is essentially we can see that we create the school, right? We can see that we create the school, and then we create the students, right? And then you see our destructor is what is also deleting those students. That means that we are responsible for creating the students and essentially also what deleting those students. So it's not a copy and paste whereby you just look at it and you just assume it's maybe composition or maybe aggregation. You just need to look at who has full ownership in the sense that who creates this, in this case, who creates the students and who deletes the students, right? In this case, in aggregation, in the case of aggregation, the student is created separately. Can we just compare these two, right? So remember, here we're creating the school, and then here we're creating the students, right? So in this case, our school, can we see that we're saying school dot students, and then we're creating essentially those students. We're just creating an array of 5 students, right? So our class in this case is responsible for what? For creating those students and essentially deleting them. That's full ownership. In this case of aggregation, what is happening is the student class, right, was created independently of our class. Okay, let me just try and change this so that we don't get confused. Let me just go ahead and update that to student so that we don't have to say class, right? Right, so what we notice is essentially this student class is created independent of our school class, right? And then what we do later on is just pass it by reference, receive it by reference in our constructor, right? And then essentially just link the two, basically, right? Then what we need to note is that because of ownership, right, this class is not responsible for deleting students. if maybe it was a heap memory or whatever it may be. That means that this must be deleted manually, or no, not necessarily manually, right? Or it can be, if it was on the heap, we'll have to delete it, but it must not be within this class, because this class does not have ownership of student. It did not create student, because that would just violate the ownership rules, right? So the difference between the two is composition has full ownership. That means that essentially student this class creates the student and then deletes it. In this case, aggregation does not necessarily create it, right? But we can see that essentially it partially uses it, meaning it partially stores it, right? Unlike dependency, whereby nothing is stored. So aggregation, it's partially stored, right? But it does not have full ownership. That means that it must not delete, if it maybe it was heap memory, it must not delete this variable, or this maybe an array, or whatever it may be. It must not delete it, because why? It is essentially just using it. It does not have necessarily full ownership, right? But the difference between aggregation and dependency is that aggregation does actually store it as a member, as we can see that it's essentially a member here. Unlike dependency, whereby we just use it, we can see that after this it doesn't even exist in our class, right? But with aggregation, right, it does exist, but we don't have full ownership, right? With composition, in this case, what we need to do is essentially it exists, we create it, right, and essentially we delete it, basically. So yeah, I think those are the two things that you must just be aware of. It's not something that you can just cram, right? It's something that you must just understand who is responsible, right? Who's responsible for creating this, and who's responsible for deleting this, and that essentially will just give you an idea of which relationship it is, right? So let's just go ahead and see how we can represent that in a UML diagram, right? So let's just go ahead and start with aggregation, right? So we're going to have a shape, right? So once we essentially have our two classes, just go ahead and close this. Let's just replace that with essentially the classes that we're trying to represent, right? School. Right, so we said that essentially for now we don't necessarily care about the students, or rather the properties or the methods, but I think it would make sense to essentially write this property right here, right? Let's just go ahead and do that. Now we need essentially an arrow to represent this, right? So let's just go ahead and pull out the shapes, right? And then you can just scroll over here, and then when you hover over them, you can see the different types of relationships that we can have, right? So let's just go ahead and choose that one, which is essentially aggregation. And then how you want to do this, you want to essentially point it in this direction, right? So yeah, you could try and make it straight, but it does not really, so for formatting wise, you can try and make it straight, but what we're saying is that student essentially is being stored by the school, right? But as temporarily, right? Partially, basically, right? And then what we do with composition, let's just go ahead and move to composition. How we represent this is essentially, let's just go ahead and remove this arrow, right? We don't need to create new shapes, because it's similar classes, right? So the difference is that the arrow now is essentially filled in, right? We saw that the previous one essentially it was empty, it was an empty arrow, right? This one essentially is filled in, right? This is basically also saying that student is being used by what? The school. The student class is being used by what? The school. And then with aggregation again, the arrow is essentially this one, right? Which is empty, basically. The arrow inside is empty. For composition, essentially it is dark, right? It's filled in, right? So that is essentially the two types of or the three types of relationships that we can have, right? When we talk about essentially association, right, within classes, right? So that's essentially how we can represent classes using UML diagrams. And essentially we introduced three association relationships, mainly dependency, aggregation, and composition, right? So that's the end of our episode. If you enjoyed this episode, go ahead and leave a like, subscribe if you don't want to miss any other releases. Otherwise, cheers.